Picture this. You've just finished a long day. You decide to share a piece of your life online, maybe an idea you believe in, a project you've been working on, or even something vulnerable and honest. The notifications start rolling in. Most people are supportive. A few even thank you for your words. But then, one comment appears, sharp, marking, personal, and just like that, everything else fades. That single remark echoes louder than all the praise combined. Why is it that one voice of negativity outweighs 100 voices of encouragement? Why do we give so much power to people who, in reality, often mean nothing to us? This is the paradox of our age. We live in a time when opinions are everywhere, always available, always in our faces. Social media has turned strangers into critics and critics into audiences. For men in particular, the expectation is simple: be tough. Don't let it get to you. But let's be honest, words hurt. Insults leave a mark. Being targeted by criticism or hate, whether in person or online, stirs something deep inside. Neuroscience shows that social rejection activates the same regions of the brain as physical pain. That's why a cruel comment doesn't just sting, it lingers. And yet, criticism is not new. 2,000 years ago, the Stoics lived under constant scrutiny. Marcus Aurelius, though emperor of Rome, was judged relentlessly by his own senators and soldiers. Seneca, philosopher and statesman, endured accusations of greed and hypocrisy. Epictetus, once a slave, was mocked for his lowly status. They understood criticism. They lived in the midst of it. And still, they found a way to remain unshaken. Their solution was not to hide. It was not to silence others. Their answer was to build an inner fortress to separate what is within their control from what is not, and to measure their worth not by the shifting voices of the crowd, but by the steady compass of virtue. Think about your own life for a moment. How often have you lost sleep over a single comment? How many times have you replayed a moment of criticism again and again, wishing you had responded differently, or wishing it had never been said at all? How much of your energy has been consumed by trying to win battles for universal approval, battles no one has ever won? Here's the truth. You will never silence all critics. You will never escape all judgment. No matter what you do, someone will disapprove. But here's the other truth. You don't need to win their approval to live well. What you need is a way to meet criticism without losing yourself. That's what Stoicism offers. Not an escape from the noise, but a shield against it. Not a promise that people will stop judging you, but the power to remain unbroken when they do. In this journey, we'll explore 5 Stoic questions. Think of them as anchors, questions that bring you back to clarity when the storm of criticism tries to pull you off course. These questions will not silence your haters, but they will silence the hold that hatred has over you. First, we'll ask what is truly within your control when criticism strikes. Second, we'll learn how to search for a truth, even in hostile words. Third, we'll confront the choice between responding with virtue or with ego. Fourth, we'll ask what truly defines your value, because it cannot be likes, shares, or applause. And finally, we'll reach the highest step, the ability to turn attacks into fuel. To practice what the Stoics called amor fati, the love of fate, even when fate arrives in the form of harsh words. Each step builds on the last. Each question brings more strength, more clarity, more freedom. This is not about becoming untouchable or indifferent. It's about becoming steady, someone who cannot be broken by the words of others. So let me ask you, the next time someone criticizes you, how will you respond? Will you crumble under the weight of their words? Will you lash out, only to regret it later? Or will you stand steady, grounded in who you are, unmoved by noise, and shaken by judgment? The Stoics believed that criticism itself is never the real problem. The real problem is how we interpret it and how we let it shape our sense of self. And that is the journey we are about to begin. Criticism is like noise. Sometimes it's soft and easy to ignore. Other times, it's loud and piercing, and no matter how hard you try, it seems to find its way inside your mind. The Stoics understood this problem well. They lived in public roles where judgment was constant, and they knew that peace could not depend on silence from the crowd. It had to come from strength within. Epictetus gave us one of the clearest tools for dealing with this noise, the dichotomy of control. He taught that everything in life falls into two categories. Some things are up to us, some things are not. The opinions of others, what they say about you, how they interpret your actions are not up to you. They exist entirely outside your control. But what is up to you? Your judgment, your choices, your response. This is more than philosophy. It's a filter. Imagine it like a sieve that separates what deserves your attention from what doesn't. When criticism comes, the first question is not, do they have a point? Or how should I respond? But rather, is this within my control? If it isn't, then no amount of effort will change it. Why give it the power to disturb your peace? Marcus Aurelius, who was judged constantly as emperor, reminded himself daily, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. His words are simple, but they cut through the chaos. You cannot control what others say, but you can control whether you let their words take root in your mind. Think of a modern example. You post an idea online. Someone disagrees respectfully. That's feedback. But then another person mocks you, not because of your idea, but because of who you are, your appearance, your voice, your past. Which one deserves your attention? The first might contain truth you can use. The second is noise outside your control, irrelevant to your growth. Yet too often, we reverse the two. We obsess over insults and ignore genuine insights. The Stoic filter helps correct this imbalance. It forces us to pause and separate signal from noise. It teaches us that our time and energy are precious, and to spend them on things beyond our control is to waste the only life we have. But here's the challenge. Knowing this in theory is easy. Living it in practice is not. When someone insults you, your emotions flare. Your pride is wounded. You want to strike back. That is human. But Stoicism is not about pretending you don't feel. It's about choosing not to be ruled by those feelings. It's about catching the moment between stimulus and response and asking, does this deserve me? Or am I about to hand over my peace to someone who never earned it? Seneca once wrote, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Much of the pain of criticism comes not from the words themselves, but from the way we replay them in our minds, magnify them, and assign them power. The Stoic filter stops the spiral. It reminds us that words are only sounds or text on a screen, until we decide they mean more dots. So the next time criticism finds you, practice this filter. Before reacting, ask, is this in my control? If yes, learn from it. If no, release it. This simple question can save you hours of wasted anger and days of restless nights. And here's the beauty of it. Once you begin to live this way, criticism loses its sting. You may still hear it, but it no longer pierces. It passes through the filter and falls away, leaving only what is useful behind. This is the first layer of defense, the Stoic shield against criticism. But the journey doesn't stop there, because sometimes, even in the harshest words, there is truth worth keeping. The Stoics challenge us not only to dismiss noise, but also to search for wisdom hidden within the attack. And that brings us to our first Stoic question. Every time criticism hits, the mind reacts almost automatically. The body tenses, the heart rate quickens, and pride pushes us toward one of two extremes, either to shrink in shame or to lash out in anger. But the Stoics invite us to pause and Ask a question that breaks the cycle. What is truly in my control here? It sounds simple, almost too simple. And yet this single question can turn a wave of insults into nothing more than background noise. Think about it. You cannot control the words someone types behind a keyboard. You cannot control the mood they're in, the grudges they carry, or the hidden motives behind their attack. You cannot control the gossip that spreads in an office, nor the whispers in a community. All of these lie outside your reach, but you can control how you interpret those words. You can control whether you respond with dignity or with rage. You can control whether you allow the criticism to take root inside you or whether you let it pass by. Like wind against stone, Epictetus framed it this way. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. This was not abstract philosophy for him. Born into slavery, mocked and dismissed, Epictetus knew well what it meant to be judged unfairly. Yet he chose to focus his energy only on what was within his command: his thoughts, his actions, his character. Let's bring this into the present. Imagine you receive a harsh email at work. A colleague questions your competence in front of others. What is within your control? You cannot erase their words. You cannot rewrite the moment. But you can choose to respond calmly instead of defensively. You can decide whether to take the comment as feedback or to discard it as noise. You can choose to rise above it, holding your integrity intact. Now picture the alternative. You take the insult personally. You replay it in your head for days, imagining comebacks, fueling your resentment. In doing so, you give your critic exactly what they wanted: your piece. The insult was theirs to deliver, but the suffering, that was yours to create. This is the freedom the Stoics point to. The freedom of realizing that while you cannot control the actions of others, you always control the space between their action and your reaction. And in that space lies your power. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself often, choose not to be harmed and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed and you haven't been. Notice the radical responsibility here. He is saying that the meaning of an insult does not come from the words themselves, but from the weight we decide to give them. Of course, this is not easy. It takes practice. Our pride wants to fight back, to defend, to prove. But every time you pause and ask, what is truly in my control here? You strengthen the muscle of resilience. You train yourself to stand steady while others lose themselves in noise. So the next time criticism comes online, at work, even within your family, stop for a moment. Ask the question. Write it down if you have to. What here belongs to me, and what does not? Then let go of what isn't yours. You'll be surprised how much lighter the load becomes. This is the first Stoic question, the foundation. But it is only the beginning, because once you've filtered out what isn't yours to carry, another challenge remains. How do you handle the part of criticism that might be true? Can you face even harsh words with the humility to learn from them? That is the next step, and the next question. The Stoics never said to ignore all criticism. In fact, that would be arrogance, a refusal to admit that others may sometimes see what we cannot. Instead, they asked us to use criticism as a mirror, even when the reflection is uncomfortable. Seneca once wrote, "The truth is often spoken by our enemies." Think about that. Friends may protect our feelings, but those who dislike us have no reason to hide their judgments. Their words may be cruel, but within them, there can sometimes be a truth that is sharper and more useful than anything we would have heard otherwise. So the second Stoic question becomes essential. Is there a truth I can use in this criticism? Let's be clear. Not every attack has value. Insults about your appearance, your background, or your worth as a person say more about the speaker than they do about you. But sometimes, even in clumsy, harsh, or hostile words, there is a point worth hearing. Picture this. You present an idea at work, and a colleague dismisses it rudely, saying, "You never back your points with enough evidence." The tone stings. The disrespect is real. But if you look beneath the delivery, there's a seed of truth. Maybe your argument could have been stronger with more data. If you focus only on the sting, you miss the lesson. If you look for the truth, you walk away wiser. This is what it means to extract value from criticism. It's not about excusing cruelty. It's about refusing to let someone's tone blind you to potential growth. It's about saying, "I don't accept the insult, but I'll take the insight." Epictetus compared life to wrestling. He said the opponent tests you, pushes you, forces you to grow stronger. Criticism, when faced with courage, works the same way. It can be resistance training for the soul. So how do we practice this? Start with a pause. When you hear harsh words, resist the urge to react immediately. Instead, ask yourself, is there anything in this worth keeping? Separate the message from the delivery. Even if 90% is noise, the remaining 10% could be the exact feedback you need to sharpen your character or improve your work. Think of it like panning for gold. Most of what you sift through will be dirt. But if you give up too soon, you might miss the nugget hidden inside. There's a practical exercise you can try. Keep a small notebook. Whenever you receive criticism, write it down word for word. Later, when the emotions have cooled, revisit it. Underline any part that points to a specific behavior or action you can adjust. Cross out the rest. This way, you train yourself to see criticism not as a wound, but as raw material you can refine. Here's the paradox. Once you start looking for truth in criticism, you actually become less fragile. Why? Because even insults lose their power. Instead of being weapons, they become tools. Instead of leaving scars, they leave lessons. Seneca reminded us, the one who learns from his enemy is the wisest of all. That doesn't mean you should seek out enemies, but it does mean that when they appear, you don't have to walk away empty-handed. So ask yourself, the last time someone criticized you, did you dismiss it entirely? Or did you search for what could be useful? If you find even a fragment of truth, then you've turned an attack into a gift. And in doing so, you've robbed your critic of their victory. This is the second Stoic question. First, we filtered what is within our control. Now, we've learned to harvest truth, even from harsh voices. But the journey deepens further, because the real test is not just about what we hear, it's about how we respond. Do we meet criticism with virtue or with ego? That is the third question. If the first two Stoic questions help us filter and learn from criticism, the third brings us face to face with the hardest part, our own pride. Because more often than not, it isn't the insult itself that causes the most damage. It's our reaction to it. When we are criticized, the ego rushes in. It whispers, "They disrespected you. Don't let them get away with it." Hit back harder. And in that moment, we stop thinking clearly. We stop choosing wisely. We hand control of our emotions over to the very people we want to rise above. The Stoics saw this danger clearly. Epictetus said, "If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation." In other words, anger is not forced upon you. It is permitted by you. So the question becomes, when faced with criticism, am I reacting with virtue or with ego? Virtue, in the Stoic sense, means responding with wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. Ego, on the other hand, responds with pride, defensiveness, and the hunger to win at all costs. Imagine a leader who is publicly insulted during a meeting. If he reacts with ego, he raises his voice, belittles the critic, and tries to prove superiority. He may win the moment, but he loses respect in the long run. Now imagine the same leader reacting with virtue. He listens calmly, addresses the point without personal attack, and steers the conversation back to what matters. His composure speaks louder than any insult could. Which one demonstrates true strength? The same applies online. A hateful comment invites retaliation, but every sharp reply only fuels the fire, trapping you in a cycle of hostility. Virtue, instead, may choose silence, or a measured response that focuses on facts rather than emotion. Sometimes, the most powerful response is no response at all. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. Think about that. When you mirror the anger of your critic, you become what you despise. When you hold steady, you rise above. Of course, this doesn't mean you never defend yourself. Stoicism is not passivity, it is clarity. It means asking, if I respond now, will it be guided by justice and wisdom or by ego? If the answer is ego, then silence is stronger. If the answer is virtue, then speak, but speak with dignity. Here's a simple practice. The next time criticism comes, pause before replying. Ask yourself, what virtue do I want to show here? If it's wisdom, you might respond with reason. If it's justice, you might clarify the truth. If it's temperance, you might choose restraint. This one question can turn what would have been an outburst into an act of strength. And remember this, every reaction is a message to the silent majority watching. At work, in your family, online, most people will not join the argument, but they will notice how you carry yourself. Do you want them to remember you for your temper or for your composure? Criticism always tests your pride, but if you choose virtue over ego, you turn the test into proof of character. This is the third Stoic question. We've filtered what's in our control, searched for truth in criticism, and now learned to respond with virtue instead of ego. But there's still a deeper wound to address, the fear that criticism defines who we are. That brings us to the fourth question. At some point, every man who faces criticism wrestles with this deeper fear. Maybe they're right about me. Maybe this insult says something true about who I really am. And here is where criticism cuts the deepest knot in the words themselves, but in the doubt they awaken. This is why the fourth Stoic question matters. Does this criticism define my worth? For many of us, the answer, though unspoken, is yes. We tie our sense of value to what others say. When they praise, we feel strong. When they criticize, we feel small. Our worth rises and falls with the shifting winds of opinion. But the Stoics insisted this is a dangerous illusion. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of the Roman world, reminded himself daily not to let reputation determine identity. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. His empire could praise or condemn, but he refused to hand over his dignity to the crowd. Seneca put it even more bluntly. A man is as wretched as he thinks he is. In other words, misery is not created by insults, but by agreement with them. If you believe the critic, you suffer. If you root your worth elsewhere, their words fall flat. So where should we root our worth? For the Stoics, the answer was clear. In virtue, wisdom, courage, justice, temperance. These qualities are entirely within our control. And once embraced, they cannot be taken away. Think of two men who both face rejection. One hears you're not good enough, and he accepts it as truth. His sense of self crumbles. The other hears the same words, but he measures himself differently. He asks, did I act with integrity? Did I pursue wisdom? Did I show courage? If the answer is yes, then no insult can undo that. His worth remains intact. Now think about your own life. Where does your sense of value come from? Is it tied to your achievements, your reputation, your image? If so, every criticism will feel like an attack on your very identity. But if your worth is tied to your character, then criticism cannot touch it. This doesn't mean you ignore all feedback. As we saw in the last question, you still look for truth. But once that truth is considered, you release the rest. Because your worth is not up for debate, there's a practice you can try. Write down 3 virtues you want to be remembered for, not skills, not possessions, but qualities of character. Each night, ask yourself, did I live according to these today? This shifts the measurement of your life from the external to the internal. It gives you a yardstick no critic can steal. Here's the paradox. When you stop letting criticism define your worth, you actually become more open to it. You can listen without fear, because your core is secure. You can learn without crumbling, because your identity isn't on trial. So the next time someone criticizes you, pause and ask, does this define my worth? If the answer is no, and it always should be, then let the words pass. If there's truth, use it. If not, discard it. But never hand over your identity to the judgment of others. This is the 4th Stoic question, and it leads naturally to the final one, the most radical of all. Because the Stoics didn't just tolerate criticism. They asked something even harder. Can you transform it? Can you take the attack itself and turn it into fuel? That's the 5th question. We've asked for questions so far about control, about truth, about virtue, about worth. Each one builds resilience. But the 5th Stoic question is the most radical and the hardest to live. Can I turn this attack into fuel? The Stoics did not believe in merely surviving life's blows. They believed in transforming them. Marcus Aurelius captured this perfectly. The blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it. Criticism, then, is not a threat to your fire. It is the wood that feeds it. Even if the wood is wet, even if it smokes and sputters, the fire consumes it and grows stronger. Think of what this means in practice. A harsh insult is not just something to endure, it can be an opportunity. An opportunity to practice patience, to refine humility, to deepen self-control. A smear against your reputation can test your courage. A mocking comment can strengthen your ability to focus on what matters and ignore what doesn't. Each attack is a form of training, a test designed not by choice, but by circumstance. Consider the athlete who trains with resistance. The weight, the strain, the friction, these are not pleasant in themselves, but they're what builds strength. Criticism works the same way. Without resistance, muscles weaken. Without criticism, character softens. But when we face resistance and use it as training, we grow. Epictetus lived this out. Born a slave, marked for his low status, he could have been crushed by the insults of those above him. Instead, he used those hardships as material for his philosophy. His very life became proof that dignity does not depend on freedom or fame, but on how one meets adversity. Now think about your own life. When someone attacks you online, at work, in your family, do you see only the wound? Or can you see the weight they've just placed in your hands, a weight you can lift to become stronger? Imagine reframing every insult as an unexpected training session for the soul. How different would your days feel? Of course, this doesn't mean pretending that cruelty is good. It means choosing to use what is given, even when it is unwanted. This is what the Stoics called amor fati, the love of fate. To love not only the joys, but also the challenges. To see in every insult not just pain, but potential. Here's a practical way to try this. The next time you receive harsh criticism, don't ask, "Why me?" Instead, ask, "What is this here to teach me?" Is it patience? Is it courage? Is it humility? By naming the virtue you can strengthen, you turn the insult into training. And here's the paradox. Once you start treating criticism this way, haters lose their power. They may still throw insults, but instead of weakening you, they build you. Instead of shaking your identity, they forge it. Their intention is harm, but the outcome is growth. Marcus Aurelius saw it this way: every obstacle is fuel for the fire. Every criticism is material for the man who chooses to rise above it. This is the essence of the fifth question. So when you face criticism, pause and ask, can I turn this into fuel? If you can, then nothing is wasted, not even the harshest words. This is the final Stoic question. Together, the five form a complete shield and a compass. They don't promise a world without criticism. They promise a man who no longer fears it. And now we arrive at the closing reflection, where we bring all five questions together into a single path forward. We've reached the end of this journey. 5 questions, each one sharpening the way we face criticism and deal with those who would try to tear us down. And now, as we step back, the pattern becomes clear. The first question, what is truly in my control here, taught us to stop wasting energy on things we can never command, and to reclaim power where it always belonged, in our own mind, our own response. The second, is there truth I can use in this criticism? Reminded us that even harsh words can hide lessons, that wisdom is sometimes delivered by those who dislike us most, and that growth requires humility to learn even from our critics. The third, am I reacting with virtue or with ego? Brought us face to face with our pride. It forced us to see that the strongest man is not the one who shouts the loudest, but the one who answers with wisdom, justice, courage, and restraint. The fourth, does this criticism define my worth? Cut to the deepest wound. It reminded us that our identity is not built on applause or condemnation, but on character. That our worth is rooted in virtue and cannot be handed over to strangers' opinions. And finally, the fifth, can I turn this attack into fuel? Showed us the radical Stoic path, not just to endure criticism, but to transform it, to let insults and attacks become the weight that builds strength, the wood that feeds the fire. Together, these questions form more than a set of tools. They form a way of life. They remind us that the crisis is never really out there, it is always in here, in how we think, how we judge, and how we choose to live. Think about what this means for you. The next time someone mocks you online, the next time a colleague questions your ability, the next time a stranger hurls an insult, pause. Ask the questions, filter what you can control, extract any truth, react with virtue, not ego. Root your worth in what cannot be taken. And finally, ask how you can turn the attack itself into fuel. Do this, and you'll find that criticism no longer weakens you, it strengthens you. This is the gift of Stoicism. It doesn't remove life's challenges, it transforms them. It doesn't silence your haters, it silences their hold over you. So here's my challenge to you. Choose one of these questions, the one that speaks most to your current struggle, and carry it with you this week. Write it down, put it on your phone screen, ask it every time criticism comes your way. Watch how it changes your response. And if this journey has resonated with you, if you found value in these Stoic lessons, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with a friend who is struggling. Start a conversation about what true resilience looks like. And if you want to keep exploring the wisdom that has outlasted empires, subscribe to StoicCraft. Here, we go beyond slogans and motivational noise. We search for timeless truths you can live by every day. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." Let these 5 questions shape the quality of your thoughts, and your life will change, not because the world is kinder, but because you are stronger. Criticism will not disappear. Haters will not vanish. But when you face them with Stoic clarity, they no longer define you. They refine you, and that, in the end, is the only victory that matters.